I'm David Bloom. This week, in Next TMT Talks, will skyrocketing memory costs put your Grand Theft Auto 6 and iPhone experiences out of reach? Elon, the movie star and mobile phone seller? A few words about Malik, who could see around corners better than most. Is A24 still the cool movie company? And the NFL decides not to gamble on Brendan Sorsby. Well, let's get to it, Daniel. Tell me a little bit about what you're hearing about the latest hijinks with dear old Elon.
Well, David, there's speculation that he wants in the telecom business and to compete directly with Verizon, AT&T Mobile. Turns out he said he wanted to compete head-on with Verizon and AT&T Mobile. The woman who runs the day-to-day for SpaceX told investors in the big IPO roadshow that they plan to launch Starlink Mobile, which is a terrestrial service that will be sold at retail. Whether you're in a rural area that gets D2D satellite, device-to-device satellite communications through T-Mobile, through their partnership with Starlink.
So we have, just to clarify, we have some new acronyms this week. D2D is not a fun one for me, but that's your telecom pals who can't help themselves, like the Defense Department.
Well, it means that you're getting it directly from a satellite, not going through a terrestrial radio system with towers and et cetera.
Right.
But that's an advantage. One thing that cellular can never do was go into hard-to-reach rural places. If there isn't a tower nearby, they can't find you. You can't get signal. But at the same time, satellite mobile doesn't work in cloistered urban environments where you can't get a satellite signal. You need kind of a combination of both.
I thought urban was the opposite of cloistered, but hemmed in. We'll just call it hemmed in. Cloistered, I just think of some monastery on a hill out in the woods, but that's just me.
You're always fantasizing about monasteries. What's up with that?
No, I'm not. I'm running away from them to giant cities as much as I can. Silence and whacking oneself in the forehead with a board just never appealed. I have journalism to whack me in the face.
So it does appear, they're talking to Starlink, which is a division of SpaceX. They're talking to Charter, which piggybanked on a deal with Verizon for many years as they built out their Wi-Fi hotspots. Basically, if you have Spectrum Mobile and there's a hotspot that uses their hybrid fiber coaxial cable network nearby, you connect to that when you're outside. Or maybe you do that when you're home. You actually connect to your home broadband, your home Wi-Fi.
Right.
And then in certain select areas, they lease Verizon's network at a wholesale rate that was agreed on a long time ago, some deal.
I mean, the crucial little secret that people never realize is they buy all those minutes and they spend most of their time calling from home, where it's just piggybacking on their broadband and their Wi-Fi, and it's not an issue, right?
But as Comcast, who's partners with Charter on technology and billing and other things in regard to mobile, and Charter have both found out that the more they build out their Wi-Fi capability on a national level, they also share, if you go to a Comcast footprint, you use theirs. I'm a Spectrum Mobile user. So they've slowly built out infrastructure to supply terrestrial services to a company like Starlink. Notably, in May, during their first quarter earnings reports, April, May, none of the big three wireless companies said they had any interest in giving a wholesale lease deal called an MVNO deal to Starlink. So the belief is that they'd build it on their own or find some other way to do it. And this looks like a way that could happen.
But here's the question. What's in it for Charter and Comcast to offlink or offload a whole bunch of customers to Elon? I guess he could just buy, probably not Comcast, but Charter he could buy. Fact is, though, they just closed their $60 billion deal for Cursor, an AI company that will hopefully make Grok less regrettable, unlikely. But they just dropped $60 billion and their shares came back down to earth. So I'm wondering and their bonds did not sell great. They're $325 million underwater, I think, now.
I think Charter and Comcast, big cable, whatever you want to call it, junior cable is the wireless companies pejoratively refer to them. I think they're in a death match, to get hyperbolic about it, with the wireless companies. On the other side, the wireless companies launched fixed wireless access.
Fixed wireless, yeah.
Which is basically
but it is fierce. It is fierce.
So the wireless companies have approached it from the other side. They've made major encroachments on cables, terrestrial broadband, home broadband turf with fixed wireless access. So they're both playing in each other's sandbox. They've been doing that for a while.
Right. But it's like about 10% on, they each have about 10% of the other guy's backyard.
That's about right. I think it might be more.
Ish. You know.
But the enemy of my enemy is my friend, I guess. Elon Musk wants to stick it to the big three. What else, Matt?
He may want to stick it to the big three, but he's pretty good at sticking it to everybody. I don't know that he's necessarily even taking care of his friends.
This guy who goes around doging, there's the big Ebola outbreak that is far worse, they say, because DOGE killed critical international aid programs and screening programs.
Right. USAID and lots of health initiatives going on in Africa, including surveillance and forward staging of vaccines and all that nice stuff.
This is a deeply controversial figure, but when you get in business environments, there's still this great reverence to him. And you have all these really smart people who are speculating on what he could do. I mean, a one-size-fits-all wireless product that undercuts the big three. And I think Americans would respond to that because wireless it's a shell game. It's confusing. It's always been expensive and tough to buy. And if you just come in with one price that's cheaper than the rest of them, you disrupt that business on a core level overnight. That's possible. I forget who said that, but that was really interesting to me. Anyway.
Well, it would absolutely disrupt the business and he would grab some market share and absolutely out in the woods where he's already got some presence, right? Both politically and technologically, out there in Nowheresville, Starlink's the only way you're going to get a decent signal, right? No matter what Bob does with a T-Mobile ad, which, by the way, relies on what's happening with the satellite connection, I believe, to be able to make him do his commercials in the middle of nowhere, or Midland, which is often synonymous with that.
Well, this would be a combination of both. If you went off to Yosemite, you'd connect directly to the satellite network. And if you were there in Santa Monica next to tall buildings, you'd probably use a terrestrial radio cellular service. But it would be hard to beat because unless they partner with Amazon, if Starlink tells, let's say, T-Mobile, I'm not going to supply this service to you anymore. You're going to have to find it from somebody else. The only service that would truly provide nationwide service everywhere you go would be Starlink. And let's say you sold it for $50 flat rate, as much as you could chew. There's no lesser tier or lower tier. You can finance a phone with it. Just a real straightforward business model for wireless, where it's clean and easy. If you lose your phone, you can replace it. Everything's just out the table. And
but that price, that's the dream. That's the platonic ideal, right? But that is not even what Starlink goes for now. I think the bottom line stripped down is that, but as we'll get into, it's going to be interesting to see who's paying for phones.
You just said a very important thing. It's like, it sounds great, but I don't know that he's a consumerist. I don't think his mission is to make sure consumers out there pay transparent, affordable rates for wireless. I don't think that drives him. So whether we ever actually get there is probably very much up for question, but I see an opportunity. He's in a position to do it.
Yeah, theoretically, he's in a position to do it. He's got some disposable cash at this point if he wants to sink some stuff on the front end as a loss leader. But I will say, even at this point, the bottom end Starlink residential 100 gigabyte at home price is $55 a month. And that's not talking about phones and all that stuff. And it's not talking about all the other things that people want a phone to do. And he's got to build out stuff, as you said. He's got to build out some presence here or buy.
It's a very limited scale, though. I think the math if you come in with that price, you get to a scale that makes that work super quick, almost overnight. Listen, I'm way above my skis here. I get it. It's Sunday night. Why not? But I do feel
When you typically go skiing or out beyond your skis,
I do feel
it's
like that's
all downhill, Daniel. All downhill. Yes, the dream. Elon is good at spinning up dreams. And then we look at him crapping on the Tesla business model. We have to look at Starlink is the only thing in that $1.75 trillion IPO that actually makes money. And it doesn't make money, it generates revenue. But the company generates about $4.5 or $5 billion in revenue and loses about 15. So how does this get paid for? Because that technically only a party pooper. But businesses typically need to make money.
You know, how
not
many
just live off of-
consumers in the country have cell phones? Probably what, 200 million, 250? A lot.
It's more than 2/3 of the population, and it's now creeping down into the 10-year-olds. So it's most people want a phone, have a phone. So
You could
330 million people, 110 million adults.
If you did that, you'd have market share above a third of the market in no time. That's what I think. I hate my wireless bill. I feel like it's the most confusing thing I pay.
Part of the reason why it's confusing is that you're paying a set of state and sometimes local taxes and fees that are larded on that the phone companies have no control over. And that's been one of the advantages of the Coxes and Charters, because they don't get billed for taxes on top of providing the service. And then the question becomes, how soon does that loophole get closed as people go, oh, maybe we should tax this too? It'll be interesting to see, A, what the basis for that would be under legal provisions, and B, like they have to do a universal service kind of fee. You pay a few bucks to help poor people get service, so that they can do a bare bones call for emergencies only kind of service, for instance.
You pay $10 in a kind of cronyism tax, let's say, to fund Elon's super PACs and right-wing groups that he needs to make it.
Crony tax. I like that one.
Yeah.
CRT, another acronym. Pretty exciting.
Anyway, did you see the Elon biograph microdrama I sent your way?
I did not see the microdrama that you sent my way. I've been head down on other things. But Luca Guadagnino, whose new movie about Sam Altman no longer has an Amazon distributor. Amazon, by the way, is an investor in Sam Altman's company.
Right. It doesn't show those are related. They don't want to distribute it. They said they're not the right distributor for it.
They're not the right distributor. Sounds right to me, but it's a bad look. But what are you going to do? Take away Jeff Bezos's boat? I guess
you were talking about A24 today.
And I was.
We'll get to that. As you recall, though, and a few years ago, they talked about Darren Aronofsky. They said they had it lined up for him to direct an Elon Musk movie based on a Walter Isaacson authorized biography.
Right, big doorstop that Isaacson did, right?
Right. I can't find anything that updates us on that. I did see that there's speculation. Our old colleague Brian Lowry wrote about it in Status. Right, but he's got a documentary on Musk coming in hot in October, and it's all queued up and ready. Does it make it before the Ellisons take over? That's an interesting question. And there was also this thing I caught. It was made by these guys in Miami, Arturo Gutierrez. He's been in a few Disney films and Apple TV Plus things. And somehow they got money to make we have the trailer. It looks on a production value level respectable. And that's Gutierrez himself, the producer. He's also the star. He plays Musk and he's convincing. The trailer makes it look like it's a fawning project that sort of glorifies Musk as this kind of Howard Roark capitalist, a visionary fighting against everybody trying to crush his dream. But I find it really interesting because it does look like there was some money spent on it. Where was it made? When was it made? Unclear. It's supposed to come out last year. I guess it's still pending. And how was it made? I couldn't find any ties to Peter Thiel. It's interesting. Before they tackled this project, the same creative Miami duo did Jeff Bezos, with Gutierrez also producing and starring.
He only does oligarchs. It's an acting
Right.
challenge.
It's like he kind of Howard Rourkeizes, or Ayn Rand, however you want to terminologize.
Ayn Rand, yeah. He could do people on the spectrum, perhaps. Maybe he's just got that down. Who knows?
Anyway, I wanted to see it. The upshot is there's 4 different Musk projects in various stages of production and post-production and planning. So let's move on to the great chip crisis. The 100-year flood should be a 100-year drought, I would think, according to Tim Cook.
Well, yeah, technically, but he said flood, and floods actually, when you're building a house in a floodplain, the 100-year flood is what you actually build your house for. So it's above that level of where the water goes. Of course, now with climate change, those flood levels are changing and the flood maps are changing, and a lot of people are in dangerous places. Turns out people in dangerous places include many of the Mag 7 and major video game console makers like Microsoft and Sony. So this week, Micron came out and said, we are set. We've got deals with, I think, 14 of our biggest customers.
Yeah.
Long-term output deals that last through 2030, which is unheard of in a business that's always been very commoditized. And it's for the high-end stuff that goes into data centers. They call them chips, but they're big 80-pound assemblies of a bunch of stuff that go in to do the thinking for our artificial thinkers.
Right.
And the thing
Dave
is,
Chappelle would say, I'm rich bitch.
Yeah, rich. But that high-end dynamic RAM requires 4 times as much in resources as the stuff you put into your cell phone or your game console, or in the case of Apple, your iPads and Macs.
We just
Apple
went through
raised
this
price
with the great supply chain shortage of the pandemic.
We had stuff 6 years ago now. But yeah, this is different. No one can work for 9 months, so nothing's getting put out. So you use up your supply. People are working their butts off. And Micron, if you happen to buy some shares 3 years ago, they're up 800% in the last year. 800%. That's a pretty good return on investment. But that means because they can't make any more chips, and they can't make chip making facilities fast enough because that will take a couple more years to do, everybody's stuck with what we got, and they're scrambling to get stuff to be able to do everything they do. So Apple said, okay, we're going to raise prices on our iPads and our Macs from $100 to $500 each, which is a lot. Even their bottom line, $599 is now $699. Highly recommend.
Apple started making their own chips a few years ago. Kind of foreseeing.
Yeah, but there's different chips. So they are stepping away from their relationship with Qualcomm to make the modem that connects to the Wi-Fi, right, and the internet, the 5G signals. They have been making their own CPUs, which are really combined CPUs and GPUs, first for their mobile devices, the A line. And now they have they've walked away from Intel and started doing the M series, and they're at M5, and they make those. None of that is really affected directly by what's going on with memory, which is a separate kind of chip.
Right, so RAM
it gets a little confusing. So it's RAM, not CPUs, GPUs, mobile chips, none of that stuff. So this is when Tim Cook tells you he has never in 40 years seen an issue like this. And this is the man considered perhaps the greatest logistics wizard of his era. When Tim Cook says he hasn't seen something like this in 40 years, you go, this might be a problem. And it is. So they're raising their prices, but Sony and Microsoft on the Xbox and the PlayStation, they're raising their prices. It's going to cost you $900 to get a high-end Xbox, and that's a lot. And there are questions, are people going to be buying them this year? Maybe not. Interesting. I didn't get into this, but When I interviewed Brian Pinkerton, the advanced projects head for Roku,
Yeah.
I asked him about their challenges with getting enough RAM for the Roku devices. He says it's not an issue because the way we're architected, everything's up in the cloud. So we've got these simple little devices, these dongles and pucks and stuff and built in. They're not super sophisticated comparatively speaking, but they're going to get around some of this. So that'll be interesting to see how that shakes out through the competition for platforms.
Also, always been Roku's part of their pitch, their technology light. They don't use
they keep it mostly upstream a little bit and then keep it very simple down in the household.
This is where Android is still a software platform designed for mobile phones, big, broad usage software that was tailored at some point for streaming, whereas Roku is purpose-built.
Yeah, they festooned Android in particular with lots of forks. Like Amazon's Fire platform is a forked Android. Yeah, it's had its issues up and down.
But they moved on to a Linux-based
doing
platform.
its thing.
They're now
they finally got into Linux. Yeah.
That Fire TV transition last year.
But they've done a bunch of stuff with Android and various expressions. But if you want to use a phone that's competitive with an iPhone, like a Pixel or a Samsung Galaxy, whatever the number is this week, it's going to cost more too. And the question becomes, are the wireless carriers or Elon going to subsidize those $2,000 phones that likely will be announced in September, as Apple typically does?
You combine the tariffs, which are still a factor, with
definitely
with those price increases, and you're looking at smart TVs where you get a 55-inch smart TV for well under $300 for a while, and you might not see that for a long time, if ever.
The tariff stuff is going to still play out, and Trump has threatened new kinds of tariffs as he's gotten pissed off about one thing or another, I think, around the Middle East stuff. That being said, you're right. It's going to be complicated for people to get a hold of electronic devices, which may complicate some of the things that play on those electronic devices, certainly if they're more advanced, I'll just say. So it's an interesting time. I talk about it in the newsletter about bank shots, about these unanticipated consequences and follow-on effects. Caterpillar, a bulldozer company, is up 171% in the last year because they're making lots of data centers, and you got to move dirt to make data centers. Who knew? There's an actual physical,
Stephen Miller is
non-virtual
using
part
them
of
to
it.
move people for fun.
I don't give them any ideas. But that being said, this stuff is following on, and we'll see what the next thunk, as I put it, of a bank shot into the corner pocket is. But there's a lot of questions out there about how this will play out in the economy and whether it will matter. And this is mild speculation, whether it will impact inflation enough in the next 6 months to impact the election things that are going on. I don't know. Probably not, but maybe. Certainly
at this moment,
Kevin Warsh is not doing anything.
Oracles. We lost one this week. Malik, who was my age, passed away at the age of 26 this week. Shouldn't matter.
He looked older than that, I have to say.
No,
I might say also you look slightly older than that too.
Dave.
Slightly.
Dave.
Yeah, I'm not trying to sleep with you, buddy. I'm the truth teller here. You are the one making shit up. So, as they say in the technical terms.
Well, I didn't sleep well last night. As I recount in the newsletter, I intersected with Mr. Malik on one occasion. His seminal tech blog bought the tech blog I was working for, his friend Rafat Ali's paid content. It was owned by The Guardian by the time I worked there, briefly.
It went through a couple of expressions, shall we say, of paid content before Ohm picked it up, right?
So it wasn't a great match. I was probably 15 years older than the oldest person at Giga Ohm. I was in my early 40s at this time, and it was a really young place. I hadn't covered much tech at all, and I was struggling badly to cover the tech I was covering. And I just had a falling out with my previous boss, who was a friend of Ohm's. So it wasn't a match made in heaven. On my trip there, the universal consensus is, and I'll get to it in a second because it's earned, that he was a really nice, thoughtful man who innovated tech reporting to a different place. Where it got to, which is some of that is pretty decent journalism. At the time, I didn't know him. I didn't really know too much about him. I just know when we were all told at this orientation meeting in San Francisco at the GigaOM sort of loft headquarters across the street from Apple's San Francisco office. Across the street, get your new company laptop, a MacBook Pro. And I go to walk with the group, and Ohm says, "Yeah, you should stay here." I'm like, oh, that's not a good sign. And then like 5 minutes later, he introduces me to the other guys, two other guys do a report on video, and says, "You know what? I don't keep one of you. You guys should fight it out." So at the time, I thought that was really gruff, and I did get laid off 2 months later. But as I came to understand, that was probably just in kind of an impolite process in general, which is M&A, his way of giving you.
Yeah, just wait. We've got that coming with Warner Brothers pretty soon, right? And I don't think David Ellison's going to give him 2 weeks.
So. He gave me, it was like 4 months, maybe even more than that. So, you know, in the scheme of things, that was him being pretty nice. And by all accounts, he was. What struck me is that afternoon, he gave a speech to the staff that was less about GigaOM and what it was like to work there, although we kind of went into the history of the company, his rise from, he worked at Red Herring with, I think you were a co-worker at one time.
He worked with me at Red Herring. He was up north and I was down in Hollywood trying to explain to tech people why Hollywood people don't talk like tech people. So I always thought of myself as a translator. And Ohm, no shock, would have seen you as another Southern California guy who doesn't speak Silicon Valley. I was pretty good about translating, but boy, even in the Red Herring days, it was a bit of a challenge. And I had a great boss, Rob LaFranco, as my bureau chief. And I dealt with a few times, fantastic guy, really sharp, but I didn't really even have that 2-hour disquisition on the future of mobile and creators. I just wrote about it for the next 15 years.
Well, yeah, what he did, he kind of invented the category, and it became kind of an influential importer category that is alive with Kara Swisher and other smart people today. He sort of invented that category of tech blogging, serious journalism about a topic that would grow to have massive import to our daily lives and our future. And he did it with clarity and honesty and transparency, which I guess was a trade media before, and then he transformed it. And he had a kind of
it's worth not glossing over that, because in that first internet bubble, I think there was a lot of cheerleading going on. And I think of some particular guys who managed to cobble together funding and all that. And they were like, another company got a whole bunch of money to go spend, and they're going to have a party tonight, and I'm going to go. It's going to be great. And I don't know what they do, but they'll figure it out soon enough. That was the coverage, right? As opposed to a sophisticated, or at least more sophisticated conversation, which I vainly tried to hold, saying, I'm not sure this technology is ready for prime time, for instance. Like video on a 56K modem. Not quite ready for prime time, guys, but good luck on that.
Working at the entertainment trades, covering media as we did, we intersected with a lot of Silicon Valley hype already. So I wasn't unfamiliar with that, but I wasn't of the place, as you very rightly stated. And I didn't know who Ohm was. And the guy basically said, you're about to be fired. So I wasn't inclined to want to listen to what he said, but very abruptly, I was stricken by his ability to talk. He talked about the iPhone had been introduced just 4 years before that. And there was a ramp up, but by 2012, February, when I was at his talk, it was starting to gain a real traction, changing the internet, changing the technology business on a core level. It sort of rose hand in hand with social, and covering technology was.
But it actually predated.
It did.
I did cover this. So it became an enabler of the rise of YouTube in 2010, 2011, 2012. YouTube was only a couple of years old, and at least as we kind of now know it, and started to do video.
But the point I'm trying to make is that he was able to take scientific concepts like Moore's law, chip speed doubling every year, every 2 years.
18 months.
Right. And apply it to what was happening at devices that were face down in front of us. If you looked around the tables, nobody was using their phone. And this young audience was enraptured with what the guy had to say. He was really good at distilling history in very complicated technology concepts in understandable ways, and then applying them into ways that they will clairvoyantly impact the future. If you read some of the stuff he wrote recently, you can see it. So it was a rare situation. I'd heard a lot of people talk, a lot of self-satisfied people who just bought stuff and their business was, inflating. And that's what he wasn't about. He was more excited and knowledgeable about what was happening around him. He was a true journalist and chronicler. I was smart enough to pay attention and be impressed in that moment. Maybe not smart enough to work for him, but I did.
Leave before you were shown the door, but that's all right. It's worked out because now you're with me.
It did work out.
And worse.
We're fabulously successful. And
don't you forget it, sponsors. We are fabulously successful.
I'll just make there's a lot of people. You go to these 3-day conference, come see the thought leaders. They're thought leader here. There's a thought leader. This dude was one of the few ones who actually lived up to the billing. He was like, how many people actually live up to the hype? And there was a big outpouring on the internet. A lot of people were counting stories, were counting his mentorship. And I'm one of the ones who didn't get privileged by that, but I could still understand what you're talking about, which makes me feel pretty good.
Well, RIP Malik. Like I said, I had very modest interaction with him. He was always very pleasant and very smart. And the journalism of the internet and the business of technology is the poorer for his departure. But he did leave a big footprint, and hopefully others will be able to step into it. I wanted to talk a little bit about A24. Google, speaking of big technology companies, put $75 million into the hottest, coolest, most high-profile independent movie company, A24. Part of the deal is to make AI-based film production tools. And that's not necessarily a novel deal by itself, but it certainly struck me that this is a little bit like, given the blowback by sort of the core audience for A24. There's a set of folks who go to every A24 film because they curate these things and bring them out and do a really good job. And you may not like that film, but it's interesting and it's different. It's not just hack studio part 7 of some franchise that came out before you were born. And so lots of young fans in particular adore A24. They buy the merchandise. Who buys like a Paramount thing that doesn't actually work at or have a relative who works at Paramount? Or it just doesn't happen. They invest in it. The city of Paramount workers, where they have a mountain of heat, not entertainment, but heat, because it's up in the valley.
You are not going to get our marketing contract renewed, sir. City of Paramount wants nothing to do with you.
Well, I don't think we have much to offer to the lovely city of Paramount.
Well, is that the Inland Empire?
Which I once lived, but...
Is that near Pomona? What are we talking? I forget.
No. I'm sorry. There are many Paramounts.
Maybe.
Nah, it's not out that way. Panorama Village. Anyway, we're getting into the weeds here.
Yeah, we are. You did it to be there.
I'm really hoping this doesn't make it.
That's what we got Vivian for.
That's who we're counting on. Save us, Vivian, from ourselves, because God knows we need it. But A24 has been the cool indie movie company, and now Google's got a big chunk of it, and Google is less cool than they used to be when it was Do No Evil, right? It's the tie-up makes sense, but it's not sexy. And I'm just curious, will this matter? I put a little link back to High Fidelity, the movie based on the great Nick Hornby book.
As a fan, I pay homage to a good selection.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's sort of like those Jack Black and those other guys who worked in John Cusack's record store who hired him for 3 days and they keep showing up every day. He can't fire them. He can't get rid of them because clearly they have nowhere to go. Those people would have opinions about A24 being bought by Google if we just fast forwarded a quarter of a century. That's what I'm saying.
I don't know that. I mean, it's a significant investment, but it's not like a we own you investment. And the level of technological partnership with big companies like that, I mean, they must have done business with Amazon before or AWS.
Well, they've done business. They've had output deals and things like that. But what's 75 million? I said 75 million, and it's not a majority stake. It's like, how much is A24 worth these days? It's got a nice little library, but it's not a big library. And that's typically what a studio is worth. It's got a little frisson of coolness still.
Right.
What's it worth at what valuation? And I thought it's actually more substantial than nothing. It's nothing to Google, $4 trillion company, but 75 million is a lot of money when you're an indie film studio with a slim library that you can monetize in various ways for steady income. Notable, we'll see if kids keep buying the orange Marty Supreme puffer jackets and all the other stuff that they sell on the A24 store, or they turn to the Alex Karp blue Chore Coat, which is now out there and became a hot item. Apparently, Paladin, our favorite secretive, super conservative, beyond MAGA defense contractor,
Well, we need one.
has a merch store. They put out 200 of these things. They sold out like that. They got a guy whose whole gig is to think about cool no merchandise with Paladin on it. And the Chore Coat, which is actually, fun note, they're blue in France, and they were for workers in stores and other places. Not signed by Don Jr., but could have been. I'm sure you can get him to sign yours when you go to your next MAGA.
Designed, I said.
But the traditional coat is, I don't know, 100, 150-year-old design. It's where the term blue collar came from.
Oh, sure.
By the way, the blue Chore Coat. They're very nice and big, and they go over you like a little uniform, but they're looser fitting than that. So they're actually kind of cool. So they did a Chore Coat, and now they're going to go get autonomous machine guns and things. What could go wrong? That being said, here's a little deal that I thought was interesting. The NFL will not gamble on Brendan Sorsby. And you and I went back and forth a little bit because you're like, yeah, it's interesting, but that doesn't have to do with entertainment. I was like, yeah, it does, because if everybody watching the NFL and college football thinks it's all dirty because they let guys who actually bet on their own team to play still, that could impact the integrity of the petition.
How old was that dude when he did that? He was a freshman. I kind of feel like
he was a freshman or sophomore. He was a red shirt at his first college, and then he transferred to Cincinnati.
I think he went to Duke, and he made a very bad mistake as a freshman, got treatment for it, and now he wants to live a life in a career.
Yeah, that doesn't mean they have to pay him to do it.
No, but this idea that, like, we got our panties in a twist. It's a deal that affects the integrity of the game only because we've decided to make it that. It really doesn't.
We've only decided that integrity of the game. Look, the guy did it, even though it is a thing that they put in front of their faces every year. You will not gamble on your team or really anybody else's team. And he did apparently thousands of bets. He did it. Yes, he's got a problem. That doesn't mean they're then guaranteed to make millions of dollars playing the game they just bet on in violation of the most sacrosanct, whatever's left of sacrosanct in college football, the most sacrosanct rule. The NFL said, no, we're not going to do supplemental draft to pull you into the NFL early. You get to sit, and maybe you can make an application next year and hope you get drafted in the regular draft after you've shown some accountability and maybe some proof that you've worked through your addiction as opposed to something you did for the last 3 months.
There are athletes who have committed involuntary homicide with driving vehicles intoxicated in their formative years of late high school, early college, who've come back to have careers, controversial ones. But in our society, we have this sort of, like, theoretically, some things, you can't serial kill and come back from that, and you shouldn't.
The guys who got popped for involuntary homicide for driving while drunk and killing somebody weren't allowed to go into the NFL and or NCAA, make millions of dollars months after the thing happened. Okay, there's a difference. They had to go to prison.
I'm going to go in discovery, and I don't have time to do it now. But if you want to litigate this, and I think everybody's tuned in, what are they going to do next? Are they really going to follow through with this tangent? We will. I think the kid made a mistake, and he served his time. I think he did not serve his time. You keep saying he served his time. He has not served his time. As the NFL said, he showed no accountability. I screwed up.
and I will work to do better. And here's what I'm doing. He did none of that in his application to be in the supplemental draft. One of the reasons why the NFL rejected. He got a friendly judge in Lubbock to say, yes, the local university can have him. He did not serve his time, quote unquote.
This country is so screwed up. At the very top, you have the president who his whole mantra is don't apologize, never apologize. And we have a kid. Well, he didn't apologize. Whatever. Let him play fucking football. I don't want him betting on it now. I'm betting he learned his lesson. If he didn't, throw him out.
Maybe.
Make him the Black Sox. But
Okay.
well, you got to. I don't know if you saw this today. Speaking of apologies, Fox News has issued several on-air apologies or distanced itself from Kevin O'Leary, the Shark Tank asshole who said on Fox Air, I guess in the last month, that the political opposition opposing the data centers he wants to build in Utah were tied to the Chinese Communist Party. Turns out O'Leary, facing lawsuits, backed away from that and said, I have no evidence of it. It's not necessarily true. And Fox.
He is not an old Malik level journalist. Let's just say Mr. Shark Tank from Canada and paddler of Marty Supreme in the movie. He took a paddle to Timothy Chalamet's butt. They should do that to Brendan. Maybe they should do that to Brendan Sorsby. Then he can play for the NFL. You'll be all happy.
That was not Kevin O'Leary. Really?
Yes, he's in that movie.
It's him? I've seen that movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was good in that movie. I take it back. He's not
People were kind of a little shocked, but he was, He got a lot of good notices for his work in that. Yeah. Terrible human being. Something he can do.
Yeah, but you won't see Fox apologies every day. I guess the influence of a legal settlement with voting machine maker Dominion to the tune of
a little more sensitive, perhaps. Yes.
$787 million settlement a few years ago. Get ahead of it, Rupert. Lachlan, whoever is in charge these days. Oh, another lawsuit I want to talk about. The Florida Attorney General, James Uthmeier, announced this week they settled with Roku. They sued them over children's viewer privacy issues last October. Roku has committed to spending $25 million on developing technology and systems that improve the privacy of minor age viewees and give their parents more control over what they watch. So that's happening. $25 million is no small investment. We wrote a few months ago in our midweek issue about the exposure streaming companies face in terms of their TOS says, once we ship it to you, it's kind of yours. Do with it what you want. There's lots of legal discussion over the responsibility of what you show minor age viewers and the kind of information.
Well, particularly that, but it's worth noting that there's also a $50 million still to be nailed down settlement for a class action case against Disney, not for what it's showing to kids, but for how it was allegedly manipulating prices for what DirecTV's stream service and YouTube TV, another streaming VMVPD, were able to charge because it required them to take
that's not the acronym.
ESPN. It's a new one. The new one that hurt
Streaming
me.
live pay television providers, SLPTP. That's the new acronym.
That one hurt me. It's like we really didn't need to go there. But we did. We're there. And so those guys providing live streaming TV said, look, you are manipulating the market, strong-arming us, basically setting the price for the entire industry to your benefit. And the class action case came in the favor. It looks like it's going to come in settled in favor of the plaintiffs in the class action case. So if you had either of those services for any time in the last 6 years, you may be eligible for a slice of that $50 million. Again, a small amount on a $183 or $178 billion company, but not nothing. So
someone who could change your life. I want to share with us, there's a late edition of the newsletter, but it's been making the social rounds. I didn't see it. And it's kind of funny. It's Matthew Belloni. I guess he wrote this on Puck or tweeted it, one of the two or both, talking about the confusion over the Cannes Film Festival in Cannes Line. Welcome back to what I'm hearing. Thankfully not coming from Cannes Lions. the ad conference. I shouldn't have to say this, but to everyone asking if I'll be at Cannes this year, Cannes is the Festival des Cannes, a prestigious global film event where talented, creative people display and sell their work and look glamorous doing so. Cannes Lions is not. It's a tacky business conference for selling advertising, announcing brand partnerships, populated mostly by paunchy middle managers and YouTubers. They call it the, quote, International Festival of Creativity, but that's just to make the suits and the media people feel better about their soulless corporate boondoggle. But yeah, I don't know if I agree with it. I think, as somebody
he's not wildly wrong, but it's a little bit like, dude, you kind of depend on advertising some too. It is shocking. There's some puffery going on in advertising and the film business. And the film business has always felt like it's superior. Who saw that coming? But Cannes used to be, I think, MEDEM or MeFed or one of those MI something acronyms. And they changed it to Cannes Lion just to confuse people.
Right.
It's party about a month after the one that involves film. Clearly, they're kind of riding on the glitz and glamour and the prodigious sipping of rosé on the Croisette that is the Cannes experience.
It's a little bit like the Jesse Eisenberg as Mark Zuckerberg scene in The Social Network, where he says, you have the exact minimum of my attention to the attorney. Sort of very belittling. But it's true. I mean, it doesn't fly nearly as glitzy. And I think we know that. And we're kind of aware that they're very different animals. But,
not everybody is. Not everybody is. And what we saw at Stream TV, right? There were lots of people there who are heading on to Cannes right after that because they're a few days apart. So they were flying out of Denver right to France. That's a cultural shift. There's a whole set of folks who were all about the advertising, going to Cannes to talk advertising. Maybe not in the most creative ways, but the business ways. So how do you get it to people? But Matt launched, it's a little bit like that thing I put in the newsletter last week, savaging Alexi Lalas, the Guardian writer, who apparently that thing got passed around a lot. And we'll see if Alexi comes back after this World Cup is over. He seems chastened a bit and a little bit less annoying in the World Cup coverage. And Thierry Henry and Zlatan Ibrahimovic are royalty. So, anyway.
Was it what you wrote or the guy at The Guardian?
No, the Guardian guy wrote it. I merely happily quoted one of the many pungent phrases and agreed that he has not been a net plus. I think the plus minus that they do in like basketball, he's like way minus. And then the other guys are like plus players or plus commentators. And Rebecca Lowe's queen, but anyway. But yes, it's a little bit like that. So anyway, we should probably be wrapping this puppy up.
Yes.
With that. Right. This is Next TMT. You can find us at nexttm, as in media, t.com.
We're not publishing. Holiday week this week. No midweek issue.
It's a holiday week, so it's going to complicate what we're doing because we know you're not reading us in the middle of this week. And frankly, you could use a break. But let me just say, happy birthday, 85th, my mother. And since we're not publishing this week, happy 34th to my son. It's one of those times of the year. Lots of big celebrations, and some of them for the 150th birthday of our complicated country. And I hope you're able to celebrate it safely and warmly with people you love and care about. In the meantime, share, subscribe, comment.com. You can go and sign up for this here newsletter and get it for free twice a week. You can also go on to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube and get audio and or video versions of this podcast itself twice a week. One we do with our partners over at Media Play News. With that, I am David Bloom here with my co-founder, Daniel Frankel, saying thank you and over and out.